We know climate change is happening. Scientific evidence is compelling. We can see climate change, feel it, maybe even taste it. The USDA's report on climate change in agriculture examines the effects and adaptations from the plow to our plate in the face of a warming globe. It affects a range of crops, but let's take a look at one in particular, the humble soybean. From milk to mascara, soybeans are much more than tofu. They're used in plastics, fuel, and almost anything petroleum makes. Soy-based products are gaining ground in the American economy. But what happens to soy as the climate changes? Soybeans are one of the staple crops of our agricultural system. They represent $20 billion in exports, 40% of the world market, and cover 75 million acres of American farmland. As carbon dioxide levels continue to rise over the next century, we could see some very big changes. In the short run, rising CO2 on its own actually has a positive effect on growth. It helps fuel photosynthesis. But there's a lot more to this story. The USDA report observes that plant growth can only increase so much before it falls off and declines. What we really care about is yield. For vegetables, temperatures 1 to 4 degrees Celsius above ideal ranges moderately reduces yield. And, says the report, exposure to temperatures more than 5 to 7 degrees above optimal leads to severe, if not total, production losses. USDA studies suggest the nutritional quality of soybeans may also take a hit when grown in the CO2 conditions expected by 2050. The beans will have lower levels of iron and zinc, vital nutrients in building a healthy immune system. More CO2 doesn't just make our food less nutritious, it leads to higher temperatures, harsher weather events, and drought, all of which make it harder for crops to grow and thrive. Part of the projected crop loss comes from increased competition with aggressive weed species. As temperatures increase, these weeds could spread from the southern Gulf states up to the Midwest, where 80% of U.S. soybean crops are grown. Higher temperatures and CO2 levels also create conditions where pests can flourish. Higher CO2 could affect soybean plants' ability to produce compounds that protect against beetles, leaving them vulnerable to attack. Climate change could force us to adapt to new growing conditions. As temperatures climb, the growing season gets longer. Farmers are already planting soy crops about 12 days earlier in the year. As drought becomes more of an issue, soybeans may not grow anymore at all in some areas, forcing farmers to turn to different crops. A related concern is the spread of pathogens. Let's look at one in particular, a disease called soybean rust, an invasive species of microbe that can wipe out up to 80% of a crop's yield. The disease was first discovered in Asia in the early 20th century. It later spread to Australia, Africa, and South America until it reached the United States from Colombia in 2004. The spread of soybean rust can partly be attributed to hurricanes. Strong storms blow the fungus to new areas where it begins destroying crops. The moisture-loving microbe that causes rust invaded the southern United States thanks in large part to Hurricane Katrina. In 2012, Hurricane Ivan carried the disease northward to Arkansas, Kentucky, and Indiana. As temperatures continue to rise, storms will keep getting bigger and stronger, potentially spreading soybean rust even more. Extreme weather events and flooding can also cause soil erosion, something soybeans are already more susceptible to than other crops like corn and wheat. Despite harsher storms, warmer weather could reduce the Midwest's summer rainfall when soybeans need water most. So what should you take away from this report? Climate change poses unprecedented challenges to U.S. agriculture, the USDA report says. But there are opportunities to adapt. The geography is shifting. In some places, it may mean turning away from traditional crops like soybeans and innovating a new way forward. It's all part of how we will feed ourselves in the coming century.